Good morning to all. This was the last slide we saw in the last session. This is a nice slide to show you what are all the causes of ductopenia. We are in the calm liver pattern, which is a pattern where the lobule will look very normal, and the ducts won't be seen in PSC, PBC, idiopathic or ischemic causes. Especially remember this picture. Whenever there is a vascular compromise, especially in transplant, we will have biliary ductular damage. That you have to remember. That happens in chronic rejection and graft versus host disease. And other thing I asked you to remember augmentin. And relation to the medicine, I want to introduce a term which is known as DILI, drug-induced liver injury. You please keep it in mind, and this should be the differential diagnosis of any liver biopsy. Now we are moving to storage disease. Storage disease itself is a very complex, but let us make it very easy. Storage diseases are mainly due to enzyme deficiency, and in the exam they will ask, is it autosomal recessive or autosomal dominant? Please remember, there is a clue. All the enzymes are autosomal recessive. All the structural proteins like spirocytosis, okay, they will be autosomal dominant. Structure is dominant, enzyme is recessive. That will be very helpful to remember. And another very simple way of remembering dominant and recessive clinically, in autosomal dominant disease, every generation is affected. Grandfather, father, son, grandson, all are affected. Whereas in autosomal recessive, it will be skipping. Grandfather, then father will escape, son will affected, great grandson will be affected. So it will, autosomal recessive will be skipping the generation, whereas autosomal dominant happens in all. Coming back to storage diseases involving the liver, we have to say where is it predominantly deposited. Is it in the hepatocytes or is it in the Kupffer cells? There are 4 diseases that happens predominantly in hepatocytes: glycogen storage disease, mucopolysaccharidosis, GM1 gangliosidosis, and Niemann-Pick's disease. Kupffer cells, mainly Gaucher's and Niemann-Pick, can involve Kupffer cells. And the clinical scenario is very important. Never ever think of storage disease in a 70-year-old. It should be in the infants or pediatric age group. Even in neonate, it may not come because it might not have clinically expressed. So think of storage diseases in infants and pediatric age group. And most of them have a classic picture, and thanks to the molecular workup, most of the diseases have molecular footprint that can help in the diagnosis. So what we have to do in liver disease is whether it is compatible with the storage disease, because there is no specific finding in the liver biopsy to diagnose a particular storage disease other than Gaucher's. So we have to go along with the clinical history, and we have to interpret the biopsy findings correlated with clinical history. And most of the storage diseases, the hepatocytes are enlarged with pale lacy cytoplasm. Okay, so Vishnupriya, what do you think when the hepatocytes are enlarged and having a pale lacy cytoplasm? What is the pattern known as?
So feathery pattern.
Excellent, feathery degeneration. Okay, so in feathery degeneration, this can also happen. So most of the cells will look like either feathery degeneration or balloon degeneration. So this is a type of glycogen storage disease, and as you know, there are 4 types. Type 1, 2, 3 will look like this, where the hepatocytes are enlarged, and it is known as mosaic pattern. See the round or poly, usually the hepatocytes are round, isn't it? So that size, round size is gone, and they are taking lot of multiple shapes, and see the mosaic pattern. And sinusoids are absent. That is characteristically seen in glycogen storage disease type 1, 2, 3. Whereas in type 4, the sinusoids are preserved, but the inclusions will be seen in the cytoplasm pushing the nucleus. And it is because of deposition of amylopectin that is positive in PAS diastase stain. So this is also known as type 4 glycogen storage disease, also known as amylopectin disease, amylopectinase. Okay, so please remember here the sinusoids are preserved. Galactosemia, whenever you get a infantile or pediatric liver biopsy with a history of metabolic disease, it will, when they show a lot of fatty changes, predominantly macrovesicular steatosis with cholestasis, we have to think of galactosemia. Tyrosinemia is another condition where there is, in addition to fatty degeneration, there is ductular proliferation. Again, as I told you, these are all very non-specific. These are all findings. You have to compare it with the clinical pictures. This is the Gaucher's disease. You may get it in the exam. Here, the macrophages are predominantly affected. The hepatocytes are not affected. Only the macrophages are affected. They will be very much enlarged in size with a tissue crumbled paper appearance. Tissue paper crumbled appearance. Okay, that is very, very important. And this you may get it in the either in the liver or spleen in the exam. Remember, Gaucher's disease, sinus histiocytosis, crumbled tissue paper appearance. Niemann-Pick disease predominantly happens in the hepatocytes. Sometimes it can also happen in the sinusoids. Again, this will look like a feathery degeneration. Without history, it's a feathery degeneration. But with the history, you have to say compatible with Niemann-Pick's disease. The next one is the Ullmann's disease. Here it is more like, again, feathery degeneration. Can you all see the enlarged hepatocytes with cobweb appearance in the cytoplasm? It's a feathery degeneration. It's because of deposition of cholesterol esters. Think of Ullmann disease. This you might have seen again and again. Okay, these are eosinophilic intracytoplasmic inclusions. The differential diagnosis is low frost disease, amylopectinosis, or type 4 glycogen storage disease, the disulfiram effect, and hepatitis B, ground glass appearance. Please remember these 4 DDs for ground glass appearance of the hepatocytes. So that's all about calm liver. Now we are moving to scarred liver, which is pattern 6. What do you mean by scarred liver? It is cirrhosis. Okay, it's a diffuse nodular fibrosis. The cirrhosis has to be differentiated into either biliary type or non-biliary type. When you look into the low power, the biliary cirrhosis will have a zigzag pattern. Okay, all the nodules will be trying to compensate each other's shape. Whereas in non-biliary cirrhosis, they are more like rounded. This is very, very important to differentiate biliary cirrhosis from non-biliary cirrhosis. These are the causes of cirrhosis. In autoimmune disease, it is autoimmune hepatitis, primary biliary cholangitis, primary sclerosing cholangitis. In biological, chronic viral hepatitis, B, C, D. Chemical, alcoholic and non-alcoholic liver disease, and medications can also cause DILI. Always remember drug-induced liver disease. Then metabolic diseases, alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency, hemochromatosis, Wilson's disease, cystic fibrosis, which is very common in the Western countries. Ischemic, iatrogenic, or idiopathic, we call it cryptogenic cirrhosis because we don't know exactly the cause. That's why crypto means hiding. Okay, cryptogenic cirrhosis. In others, you have to remember biliary atresia, stricture, congenital hepatic fibrosis, and chronic hepatic venous obstruction. Whenever they ask what are the causes of cirrhosis, you remember ABC Minto and mention all the causes. Let us see the pictures now. Before that, definition of cirrhosis: nodules because of fibrosis. It's a defining feature. In the biopsy, it will be very much fragmented. Abnormal structures can be identified reticulin and trichrome. There may be clonal variation in hepatocyte size. There may be evidence of hyperplasia. There may be some clusters of large cells and small cells that raises the controversial terminology dysplasia or hepatocellular carcinoma in situ. These are controversies. I am not going into it. So here is the picture that shows a regenerating nodule with a lot of nuclear variation. Here it is another one important feature is usually in hepatocytes the nuclei is in the center, whereas in cirrhosis the nuclei will try to come to the sinusoidal surface. So it is known as nuclei in the sinusoidal pole. Here you can see very nicely all the nuclei are trying to escape into the sinusoids. This is sinusoidal polarization. Sometimes you may see large cells, or sometimes you may see small cells. Anything can happen in cirrhosis. So these are all the low power. Again, cirrhosis is a low power diagnosis. You can see loss of architecture. There is no central vein at all. Extensive fibrosis, and here you can see more blue cells, and that is highlighted in the special stains. This is trichrome stains showing the nodules, and this is a liver biopsy in case of cirrhosis. This is how the biopsy will be. As I told in the first class, whenever it is fragmented, think of cirrhosis or tumor. Normal liver should not get fragmented. Again, whenever you see, you can see the cirrhosis in the low power, and you can see increased number of lymphoid cells in the fibrous septa. Whenever you see lymphoid cells, think of viral etiology, think of autoimmune etiology, think of medications, think of metabolic disease. Whenever you see copper associated protein deposition and see the zigzag pattern, can you see these two lobules? They are trying to, the face looks like trying to be resembling each other. Here you can see nicely this is fitting into like a zigzag pattern. That angulated cirrhotic nodule or characteristic of biliary cirrhosis. Again, you can see copper associated protein deposition in biliary cirrhosis. And whenever you see fatty change in the background hepatocytes in a case of cirrhosis, think of non-alcoholic or alcoholic liver disease as etiological factor. And I hope you all agree the diagnosis of cirrhosis here. Architecture is gone. It looks more greenish rather than pinkish. And see the sclerosis. This, when you see a central sclerosis with a possible lumen in the middle, we have to think of veno-occlusive diseases. Again, there is some hepatitis, some fibrosis, some spillover. Think of metabolic, autoimmune, viral. And here the copper associated protein is deposited in the special stain. So it is Wilson's disease. Get the clinical history. In this cirrhosis, you see golden brown pigment. So think of hemochromatosis. Here you see in the low power, cirrhosis is confirmed. It shows fatty changes also. So you have to think of alcoholic first. But in addition to fatty change, you can see the hepatocytes which are preserved. They are having PAS digestase positive globules in them. So this is a etiology will be alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency. Cystic fibrosis, as you all know, it's a secretory abnormality where all the secretions get inspissated. Here you all know the biliary is the secretion from the liver. So it will be biliary cirrhosis, and you can see the bile ducts with dilatation and inspissated eosinophilic bile. These are all bile. In case of cystic fibrosis, it won't be greenish. It will be more like pinkish. And remember, whenever there is concretions or inspissated secretions in any ductal system, we have to think of cystic fibrosis. Fortunately or unfortunately, it is not that common in India. Biliary atresia is another cause. Again, it's a radiological diagnosis. It can be intrahepatic or extrahepatic. You see the triad of obstruction, which is portal edema, neutrophilic infiltration, and ductular proliferation. Sometimes you see giant cells in the lobules. In that case, the neonatal hepatitis will come into differential diagnosis. But when you do the reticulin stain, that will help you. These are all the pictures of biliary atresia, portal edema, neutrophils, biliary ductular proliferation. You can see some giant cells. And when you do reticulin, the reticulin architecture very disturbed in neonatal hepatitis. Now we are going to last pattern, mass liver. So as I told before, whenever you see a mass, first question you have to ask is whether it is cirrhotic liver or non-cirrhotic liver. In cirrhotic liver, when you see a mass, it is 77% hepatocellular carcinoma. In a non-cirrhotic liver, it's a metastatic carcinoma. Metastasis is less common in a cirrhotic liver. Cholangiocarcinoma is the next one in non-cirrhotic liver, but that is also very less common. So when you think of primary hepatocellular tumors, hepatocellular carcinoma is 78%, whereas cholangiocarcinoma is only 8%. Others are very less in number. So how will you approach whenever you see a mass in the liver? Here it is not tumor, it's a mass. So whenever you see mass in any organ, you have to see whether it is solid or cystic. When it is solid, is it epithelial proliferation, mesenchymal proliferation? In case of liver, in the epithelium, in addition to that, hematopoietic, we have to think. In case of liver, in the epithelial, can it be hepatocellular, biliary, or mixed hepatocellular and biliary? When there is hepatocellular proliferation, is there cirrhosis or non-cirrhosis in the background? Because when it is cirrhotic, we have to think of hepatocellular carcinoma, regenerating nodules and dysplastic nodules. Whereas in non-cirrhotic liver, you have to think of focal nodular hyperplasia, nodular regenerative hyperplasia, adenoma, and fibrolamellar carcinoma is the only type of hepatocellular carcinoma that can happen in non-cirrhotic liver. In the biliary, it can be hamartoma, adenoma, or cholangiocarcinoma. In the mixed, it can be mixed hepatocellular carcinoma and cholangiocarcinoma, very rare, or hepatoblastoma in pediatric population. Mesenchymal, any tumor can happen, but these are all the common tumors in the liver arising from the mesenchymal cells. Hemangioma, infantile hemangioendothelioma, epithelioid hemangioendothelioma, angiosarcoma, angiomyolipoma, inflammatory myofibroblastic tumors, and others. Please remember PCOMA also. PCOMA historically it started from ligamentum teres. Okay, it's known as ligamentum teres tumor before. Now, in the hematopoietic, we have to think of extramedullary hematopoiesis, histiocytosis X, and lymphoma, which can be non-Hodgkin's and Hodgkin's. Coming to the cystic, inflammatory, non-neoplastic, you have to think first. Pyogenic abscess, amoebic abscess, and hydatid cyst. When you come to benign or benign cystic lesions, polycystic liver disease, celiac hepatic foregut cyst, and solitary bile duct cyst. When it comes to biliary epithelium, it's biliary cystadenoma, biliary intrabiliary papillary mucinous tumor, IPMT, and biliary cystadenocarcinoma. So this is the whole picture of approach to mass in the liver. Remember, solid and cystic, epithelial, mesenchymal or hematopoietic. In the epithelial, hepatocellular, biliary or mixed hepatocellular and biliary. In the hepatocellular, cirrhotic and non-cirrhotic. This is a classic view of focal nodular hyperplasia. Remember the renal oncocytoma, it will exactly look like that with a stellate scar. In the liver, whenever you see stellate scar, there are two differential diagnoses in a non-cirrhotic background. One is focal nodular hyperplasia, other one is fibrolamellar hepatocellular carcinoma. Okay. Focal nodular hyperplasia, even though there is a nodular hyperplasia of the hepatocytes, it's a lesion of the blood vessels. Okay. So here in the central septal areas, you see the abnormally dilated blood vessels in this area. And the other name for this is focal cirrhosis. Okay. And it will exactly look like biliary cirrhosis, but it will be very focal, where there is hepatocytes will be of more than 2 cell layer thick. Bile ducts are seen only in the periphery of the lesion, and you see abnormally dilated blood vessels. See the abnormally dilated blood vessels in the fibrous septa, and biliary ductular proliferation can be seen in the periphery. Now we are coming to hepatic adenoma. Logically, adenoma and carcinoma sequence we talk a lot in colonic cancers and in the GIT, but in the liver, logic won't help you. Adenoma is not at all connected with hepatocellular carcinoma. Adenoma arises in non-cirrhotic liver. That is very, very important. And here you can see blood vessels, but bile ducts are not formed. It is purely hepatocyte proliferation. So you will see cholestasis. People are started subtyping the adenoma depending upon the molecular features. There are 5 types you have to remember. Hepatic nuclear factor 1 alpha inactivated, beta catenin activated, inflammatory type, NOS type, and newly identified SHH type or Sonic hedgehog type. I have put the incidences here. The most common are hepatic nuclear factor 1 alpha inactivated and inflammatory. When you see a hepatic adenoma with marked steatosis, think of HNF1 alpha inactivated, and here liver fatty acid binding protein LFA-BP will be negative. In normal liver, LFA-BP will be positive. Whereas in HNF1 alpha active inactivated adenoma, it will have marked steatosis and LFABP negative. In beta catenin activated adenoma, there will be a lot of atypia, pseudo gland. See the rosette formation, acinar formation, or pseudo glands that will be more common in beta catenin. And here the beta catenin will be positive in addition to glutamine synthesis. In inflammatory type, you see a lot of inflammation with the dilated sinusoids. Here, C-reactive protein and serum amyloid associated protein will be elevated. And remember, serum amyloid protein is associated with the inflammation. So, in that way, you remember in adenoma also in liver, inflamed adenoma. In NOS type, none of these findings will be there. No steatosis, no atypia, or no inflammation. In SHH type, they are not come up with any specific morphological pattern. Let us see the pictures. Here you can see the non-cirrhotic liver. Here you can see a well-defined, well-circumscribed lesion, which is more greenish in color because of cholestasis. As I told you, bile ducts won't be there, so cholestasis will be there. When you look microscopically, in the high power, it exactly look normal. But when you go to low power, you may not see any bile ducts. So it shows a lot of, what are these things? Pavitra, what do you see here in this adenoma?
Sir, macrovesicles.
Super, macrovesicular steatosis. So what type do you think? Remember I told you one type is associated with macrovesicular steatosis. The hepatic nuclear factor 1 alpha inactivated will be associated with lot of adipose tissue. Okay, Pavitra, lot of fatty change. Super.
Yes, sir.
Next case. This is, I already labeled this beta catenin, where there will be a lot of nuclear atypia. Okay. And beta catenin will be positive along with glutamine synthesis. There is another type that is also known as telangiectatic type. You can see normal non-cirrhotic liver and then a well-defined mass lesion. Microscopically, it shows a lot of sinusoidal dilatation. And this is also known as hepatic adenoma telangiectatic type. So this table helps you to differentiate hepatocellular carcinoma from hepatocellular adenoma from dysplastic nodule. Some tables are very good for exam and very difficult practically. In a needle biopsy, practically you cannot differentiate adenoma from carcinoma from dysplastic nodule. But clinical and radiological finding will help you. Where the patient is having cirrhosis, hepatocellular adenoma is ruled out. Whenever patient is not having cirrhosis, dysplastic nodule is ruled out. So cirrhosis is a very, very important finding, and vascular invasion is very, very important finding because vascular invasion is present in hepatocellular carcinoma. Is this a normal liver or cirrhotic liver? Paul?
Cirrhotic liver.
Good, cirrhotic liver. And can you all see this nodule there? So this is a hepatocellular carcinoma arising in cirrhosis, and see the thickness of the liver plate, more than 2 cell thick. And whenever you see mitosis and necrosis, favor more of hepatocellular carcinoma, and see the bile. Whenever you are seeing bile, it is more of hepatocellular origin. It again, presence of bile won't rule out hepatocellular carcinoma or hepatocellular adenoma because both will have bile. I hope you all understand the importance of why I am stressing the inability of us to diagnose adenoma or carcinoma or regenerative nodule or dysplastic nodule in the needle biopsy. We have to be clearly convey this message to the clinicians. Again, hepatocellular carcinoma, you can see reticulin stain, see reticulin poor, isn't it? Because the hepatocyte thickness is very high, and this you can see the sinusoidal pattern here. Sometimes the hepatocytes can show clear cell changes. Sometimes they may look very pleomorphic, where we call polydifferentiated hepatocellular carcinoma. That brings into the grading system. We follow Edmondson grading, and I'm not just going through that. I will leave it for a minute so you can all see grade 1 to grade 4. These are all the various morphological types of hepatocellular carcinoma. This is a trabecular type where they are running in trabeculae. This is more sinusoidal pattern where you can see the sinusoids in between the hepatocytes. This is Skirrus type. Sorry, it's slightly pale. You can see a lot of fibrosis and hepatocellular carcinoma cells are there. But whenever you see this much of Skirrus in a non-cirrhotic liver, think of cholangiocarcinoma. In a cirrhotic liver, it's a Skirrus type of hepatocellular carcinoma. This is more acinar type. This is more medullary type, and this is the pleomorphic type. Look at the bile. So this is a non-cirrhotic liver, a very well circumscribed nodule with stellate scar. So what is the differential diagnosis? Anybody? Suman?
Sir, focal nodular hyperplasia and fibrolamellar.
Super, great. Okay, here it is a fibrolamellar carcinoma. You see the onion skin layering. Okay, it's a fibrosis, tumor, fibrosis, tumor, fibrosis, tumor, fibrosis, tumor. So alternating layers of fibrosis and the hepatocytes. Hepatocytes will be large and they will look like oncocytes, abundant eosinophilic cytoplasm, centrally placed nucleus with a prominent nucleoli. Again, sinusoidal pattern will be maintained. Bile ducts won't be there, so cholestasis will be there. This is now we are shifting gears, and this is an example of cholangiocarcinoma because it's arising in a non-cirrhotic liver and it showing lot of sclerosis. But can you differentiate metastatic carcinoma? No. In those adenocarcinomas, whenever you see, look into the normal bile ducts. In this case, the biopsy shows a bile duct with a dysplasia in the bile duct. Whenever there is a dysplasia in the bile duct and a gland-forming tumor, we can favor cholangiocarcinoma. Otherwise, all cholangiocarcinoma should be differentiated from metastatic carcinoma to the liver. Again, another table that helps to in the exam to differentiate hepatocellular carcinoma and adenocarcinoma, either metastatic or primary cholangiocarcinoma. Look into the stroma and bile. Again and again, I am telling bile is seen in hepatocellular carcinoma. When you see mucin, it's adenocarcinoma. When you see HepR1 positivity, not only HepR, if the liver epithelial markers are positive, it is more of hepatocellular carcinoma rather than cholangiocarcinoma or metastatic carcinoma. But when you see multiple tumors in a non-cirrhotic liver, first think of metastatic carcinoma, most commonly from the colon. In the colonic metastatic tumors, there will be a lot of necrosis. So the surface will show central umbilication. Please remember, these are all keywords. Multiple liver nodules with the central umbilication. Metastasis, most probably from GI tract. Cholangiocarcinoma can be differentiated or graded into 4 depending upon the gland formation. This is a mixed cholangiocarcinoma and hepatocellular carcinoma, very rare. It won't come in the exam. So don't worry about mixed hepatocellular and cholangiocarcinoma in the exam. This is hepatoblastoma, pediatric age group. We have to see the non-cirrhotic liver, very big mass with corrugated appearance or variegated appearance, lot of necrosis, hemorrhage, sclerosis. So the microscopic classification is epithelial type and mixed epithelial and mesenchymal type. In the epithelial type, it can be fetal hepatocytes, it can be mixed embryonal and fetal type, macrotrabecular type, or small cell undifferentiated type. The embryonal will be more on the small cell type, whereas fetal will have more abundant eosinophilic cytoplasm, but that adult sinusoidal pattern may not be seen very nicely. Mixed epithelial and mesenchymal, where you see the epithelial and the mesenchymal component. In those cases, you have to look for teratoid features or rhabdoid features. So without teratoid features and with the teratoid features. So this is a case of fetal type of hepatoblastoma, okay, where you can see abundant eosinophilic cytoplasm, some focal clearing, sinusoidal pattern is seen. So this is a fetal type of epithelial fetal type of hepatoblastoma. This is more trabecular type, and imagine when the trabeculae are cut tangentially, they will look like acinar. Okay, so this is more trabecular type of. When you see trabecular, again you have to divide them into microtrabecular or macrotrabecular. This is epithelial and mesenchymal. where you can see mesenchymal compartment, osteoid, and small cell or embryonal type of hepatoblastoma. Now we are seeing one of the mesenchymal tumor, common mesenchymal tumor, hemangioma. Usually it will be multiple and grossly it will have a sponge-like pattern. Then hemangioma can be differentiated into or typed into capillary and cavernous type. Cavernous type is more common. You can see the cavernous spaces filled with with scattered RBCs and having flat endothelial lining epithelium. Hemangioma, one of the complication is hemorrhage when it is there in the subcapsular area. So if it is large in the subcapsular area, probably they will go for resection. When you see in infantile age with a lot of cystic spaces in the liver, mass lesion, more like a solid lesion, but microscopically showed sinusoidal spaces like structures with flat endothelium with less pleomorphism, we have to think of infantile hemangioendothelioma. This is a classic picture. So multiple circumscribed lesions, hyperemic margins, central acellular fibromyxoid areas, gross characteristic features of epithelioid hemangioendothelioma. If you go to the biopsy, you can see tumor only in the periphery forming intracytoplasmic lumina with red blood cells. Okay, so in the center of this sample, it's more like myxoid areas like here. Okay, but you can see it will look like a lobular carcinoma of breast, individual cells, and you can see cytoplasmic lumina formation. And if you are lucky, you may be able to see some RBCs sitting within the intracytoplasmic lumina. Here they are not seen that clearly. And when you do a vascular marker, all these cells will be positive. So that's the classic epithelioid hemangioendothelioma. Angiomyolipoma is another rare tumor where you see the angioid component, myoid component, and lipomatous component. Okay, and HMB45 will be positive. Next slide. It is a sclerotic process with a lot of inflammatory cells, eosinophils, plasma cells. So you have to think of IgG4 related disease or inflammatory myofibroblastic tumor. In IgG4 disease, it will be more like a lamellar fibrosis. It is a triad with the phlebitis and predominance of lymphoplasmocytes. So whenever you see sclerotic background, hypo and hypercellular areas with a lot of inflammatory cells, think of inflammatory myofibroblastic tumor and IgG4 disease. And you all have to remember, in inflammatory myofibroblastic tumor, the ALK protein will be positive. Coming to the cystic lesions, this is a cyst, autopsy liver, very well walled cyst, which is filled with more purulent material. Microscopically, you see a central abscess with a lot of necrosis. So it is a pyogenic abscess. You have to take the culture and sensitivity to identify the causative organism. This is also multiple abscesses and microscopically it shows classic picture. Okay, macrophage-like cells with the peripherally pushed nuclei with the ingested RBCs. These are all the amoebic trophozoites. So this is a amoebic cyst. This is another classic picture grossly. It's a grape appearance and microscopically laminated acellular eosinophilic hyaline material with the daughter cysts and hooplets. Classic diagnosis of hydatid disease. This is another cyst where the lining epithelium looks more like a respiratory type of ciliated cells. So this is known as ciliated hepatic foregut cyst. It's usually unilocular with a smooth muscle wall with the respiratory or squamous or cuboidal type of cells. This is a solitary bile duct cyst. These are all incidental findings. Unilocular cyst lined by single cuboidal or columnar epithelial cells, and it will be positive for cytokine. And again, this is we already saw in the biliary epithelial type 2 pattern, where you see the biliary dilatation with the ovarian stroma like intercystic tissue, and this is classic of mucinous cystadenoma of the biliary tract. This is the intrabiliary papillary neoplasm. It's similar to IPMN, but it is happening within the biliary ducts. And biliary ducts are nothing but presence of ductal structure in the liver rather than in the pancreas. So whatever you see in the pancreas, pancreatic ducts, you can see in the biliary ducts. And whenever you see papillary tumor, you have to classify them. Is it a gastric type of epithelium or intestinal type of epithelium or a biliary type of epithelium? This area is more looking gastric type. Here few goblet cells are there, so it looks like more intestinal type here. In biliary type, it will be more like cuboidal cells, stratified cuboidal cells. Extramedullary hematopoiesis, you see the megakaryocytes. Whenever you see giant cells, please remember megakaryocytes. And in the sinusoids, you can see immature RBCs, and in the portal tracts, you can see immature myeloid cells, which are myeloperoxidase positive. You have to think of lymphoma also in case of malignancies. Then history is very, very important. This is a case of Hodgkin's lymphoma where you can see polymorphic population of cells with a characteristic Sternberg cells here and there. This here lymphoid cells are increased. The differential diagnosis is at chronic hepatitis, but when you see in high power, morphologically they will be more abnormal. And again, history is very important. IHC and flow cytometry will bring out the diagnosis. I think this is the last slide. Again, you see a lot of RBCs in a cystic spaces with no definite lining epithelium. So this is pileosis hepatis, and here you can see a lot of atypical lymphoid cells. Remember pileosis hepatis, 3 T's, tuberculosis, tumor, and a transplant. Hairy cell leukemia very commonly present as pileosis hepatis. So coming to the conclusion, you have to know the 7 types, okay, 7 patterns, and then ABC Minto, 8 etiological factors for each pattern. Every pathology report should have a final impression above, and the final impression should fit the clinical findings. Then followed by description starting from adequacy and each compartment of the liver. Start with the portal, then go to lobule. In the lobule, start with hepatocyte and then come to sinusoids. Whenever there is a previous biopsy, always compare it with the previous biopsy. Grading and staging of inflammation and the fibrosis is very, very important. And put a comment where you try to correlate the description along with the clinical findings, and that comment should lead to final impression. And whenever there is a problem, call the clinicians. After getting the history, if the features are not characteristic, get some deeper biopsy, deeper levels, and request the clinician to come and see so that you can have a one-to-one discussion, and then try to come to a final impression. When will you be happy? In the liver biopsy, after talking to the clinician, will you be happy after the final impression? No. You can be happy only when the patient is responding to the treatment of your diagnosis. That is very, 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 very important. So if you want to see a smiling face, it has to start from the patient. It has to be in the clinician. When the patients and clinicians are happy, then only you can be happy. This triad is very, very important in any biopsy. So that brings to the end of the liver discussion. If you have any questions, you put it in the YouTube, or you call me, or you message me. I will help to answer. Thank you very much. And be a warrior, not a warrior, whenever you get a liver biopsy.